come back together as a church family after many of us probably have spent time with our own extended families over the Thanksgiving holiday. Perhaps you even heard yourself in Naomi King's story of thankful dogs that we heard a moment ago. I have dogs in my family with different pedigrees, so to speak, even if they were all born into the same family. A Thanksgiving trip to my mother-in-law's farm, which I've done many times, brings together many of her 11 children, their spouses, and dozens of grandchildren in a lively gathering. These reunions sometimes feel a bit to this introvert like a place where they tumble together in great furry masses of tails and snouts and paws. The get-togethers on my side of the family tend to be smaller in number and less rambunctious, but there's still plenty going on in the emotional field. Much affection expressed in hugs and I love yous, fun activities like card games, cooking with the kids, but also from time to time, instinctive growling by the grumpy, a bit of barking from one who feels left out, even puzzlement at how some of this could have come from the same litter, yet turned out so differently. Is your family like those unruly, thankful dogs? I think every family is to some degree. And it's always been this way, all the way back to the first family. I don't mean Barack, Michelle, Malia, and Sasha. I don't mean that vast American family of many breeds and temperaments and walks of life, though I do hope and believe we will learn to play together and band the moon together and count our blessings together one of these days. I mean that these family dynamics go all the way back to that mythical family of Adam and Eve and their children, Cain and Abel. Rabbi and family therapist Edwin Friedman, who helped bring family systems thinking to religious leaders, tells the story of Cain and Abel as a case history of a family in trouble. The presenting problem is continual quarreling among the sons. The report tells that most of the focus in the family is on the older brother, who broods a lot, is extremely sullen, and is very jealous of his far more successful younger brother. Although the parents do not seem to favor one sibling over the other, the observing angel still suspects the problem has its roots with Adam and Eve. They seem to have had naive childhoods in which they lived happily as if in a paradise and were never challenged. Then something happened that changed them. They seem cut off from this past, they won't talk about it, but whatever went wrong, each places the blame elsewhere. Adam holds Eve responsible for their fall, while Eve blames the environment. Neither husband nor wife seem capable of accepting responsibility for their own destiny, the therapist writes in Friedman's case history. It appears the oldest son has absorbed this attitude. The angelic writer of the case history recognizes that Cain's jealous focus on his brother Abel stems from the family system. The family members are unable, the angel writes, to say, I am me, this is where I stand. I am here, and you begin there. It may be this constant expectation that the other should be his keeper that prevents each from taking responsibility for himself. This family attitude will certainly leave a mark on one of them. The family workup concludes, if the current inability each parent manifests to deal with his or her own pain continues, I fear that Cain's view of life will never truly focus on himself, and perceiving the source of all of his problems in his brother, he may one day up and kill him. Which, of course, is exactly how the biblical story winds up. Peter Stanke, a student of Edwin Friedman's, applied systems thinking more deeply to congregational leadership. And drawing on Stanke, I'm going to share with you a few basic concepts this morning of systems thinking that pertain not only to families, but also to congregations as emotional systems. What we're looking at is any emotional field in which various individuals operate together. The blaming exhibited by the first family in Friedman's fable of raising Cain, Stanke says, is a sign that people are stuck in their instinctive nature. They are caught in anxiety and responding from that reptilian part of the brain, instead of with calm, reason, and compassion. And blame is just one of the many ways that anxiety may be expressed. Now, I'm not trying to give anxiety a bad rap. It's a natural response to stressful situations, which we all feel at one time or another. It is what it is. The question is, how do we regulate our anxiety? How does it affect other people and groups that we are part of? What's notable about chronically anxious people, as Stanky describes it, is that they have a low threshold for pain. They aren't able to tolerate much anxiety or to calm themselves and find grounding. Instead, they may lash out with their anxious energy and blame others. Or they may think they'll feel better if they draw someone else into whatever problem makes them anxious and hope that that person will take on some of the emotional burden and take responsibility for addressing its cause. This is why in churches we sometimes have people who are anxious about some change in the life of the congregation, drawing others into parking lot conversations, spreading anxiety to others who aren't connected to the concern, looking for a savior to intervene on their behalf. That's what Stanky calls triangulation. Two people who are involved in a problem and a third person is brought into it. The alternative to triangulating is for the anxious person to take steps to calm themselves and to engage in a direct dialogue with those whose actions concern them. The antidote to anxiety, the other concept I want to tell you about, is self-differentiation. Self-differentiation is the ability to tell apart you and me, to differentiate between my feelings and your feelings, between what I'm responsible for and what you're responsible for. And for me, the easiest way to illustrate this is with a parenting situation. So say your child comes to you distraught. Maybe he's frustrated with how much practice it takes to get as good as he wants to be at soccer or at piano playing. Maybe she is nursing a hurt over another child at school who continually rebuffs her invitations to play or even says mean things. Whatever the source of the upset, it won't help the child if the mama becomes so affected that she starts crying too. Or if the papa gets mad and decides he's going to confront that unfriendly child and set him straight, rescuing his own kid. Rather, the parents need to be empathetic without absorbing the child's anxiety. Easier said than done, right? You really love that little person. To be an oasis of calm who can stay with their child through angry outbursts or fits of tears or temper tantrum, choose your age-appropriate example there, who can stay connected with them through that without taking on the child's emotions. The calmness and caring and continued connection of the parent allows the child to find some mooring beyond their anxiety. The parent may even help the child learn ways to handle their anxiety. Take some deep breaths, honey. Why don't you go for a brisk walk? How about listening to some music you like? And the parent may coach their child in reframing the problem and developing strategies by which the child can address the problem. This is a differentiated parent. They don't just get up and walk away, but neither do they allow themselves to be fused with their child's experiences and emotions. Such a grown-up knows where they end and where their child or spouse begins. That's the lesson that Adam and Eve did not learn in Friedman's fable, the reason they could not teach their children how to be self-differentiated. Here's where we come to the 1970s TV show that shares the name of this reflection, All in the Family. Are you waiting for it? When I chose the name, I was vaguely aware of this old show and that it explored the social issues of its day. It was a few years before my time, before I was watching TV anyway. I knew that one of the main characters, Archie Bunker, had staying power in pop culture as the personification of bigotry. In video clips available online, I saw Archie Bunker argue with his family about issues facing the nation. This was issues in the 1970s. The treatment of Native Americans, the glass ceilings women bump into at work, the increasing number of African Americans that were moving into the Bunker's neighborhood in that era on the heels of the Civil Rights Movement. Archie is not just a blatant bigot, he is a foil for the rest of the family. They explore and express more generous ideas about other people. And the younger generation, as I watched, seemed unable to comprehend why Archie clings to his outdated views. I don't get it. So last I came to a clip from an episode of All in the Family where Archie and his son-in-law, Meathead, get locked in a storage room together and are stuck there overnight. They have drunk some alcohol to stay warm. And Meathead asks Archie why he never questioned the prejudiced views that he absorbed from his father. Meathead heard some of the same ideas from his dad, he says, but he rejected them. So he wants to know why Archie couldn't do the same. In this vulnerable moment, a tragic truth is revealed. Archie tells Meathead that he was abused by his father as a child, and he learned not to question this authority figure. Archie wanted to believe in the good side of his dad, too, that he also knew. The man who worked hard for the family and brought him candy. The dad who taught him to throw a baseball and took him for walks in the park and held him by the hand. Archie wants to believe that despite the abuse he also received from his dad, his father really loved him. So he explains to Meathead that he felt if he questioned the things his father taught him, including his bigotry, he feared it would undermine the fragile faith he had that his father loved him, undermine their connectedness. So he chose to identify with his father rather than become his own self. Archie didn't really differentiate from his parent that had not offered him a healthy relationship or taught him how to be a healthy individual. Meathead, not having had such trauma, was able to think independently. He knew he was a different person from his dad, and that this was okay. The scene closes with an inebriated Archie lying down to sleep on the floor of the storage room after making this startling revelation. A stunned Meathead gently lays a blanket over Archie and sits awake, perhaps for hours, honoring his father-in-law in the sad new light. All in the Family played out for viewers not only the prejudiced attitudes that could be passed down from parents to children, but also invited viewers to have compassion for everyone, including the apparent bigot. And yet the overall thrust of the show was to bring forth alternative narratives, to show its viewers there was another way to understand people and life, besides Archie Bunker's narrow way that reflexively demeaned other people. Rabbi Friedman, whom I mentioned earlier, seemed to be on the same wavelength in the discussion questions provided with his version of the fable, Raising Cain. Friedman asks a question that remains so relevant at this moment in our nation's history. Suppose the human family's original sin is blaming others. How can the members of any generation modify that transmitted attitude? Norman Lear, who created All in the Family, as well as Maude, The Jeffersons, and a number of other groundbreaking shows in the 1970s, addressed this question recently for a July article in Rolling Stone. Lear was asked about his own difficult relationship with his father. Lear, a white man, had compared his father-son relationship to Archie Bunker's. The reporter asked Lear if he saw his father any differently at this late stage of life after he had written an autobiography. Norman Lear's response: "It's been a long journey. I have been much more comfortable thinking of him as a rascal. That's my favorite word, rascal. But he was many other things. But when I look back at my life, which has been so interesting, I can't blame him for anything. What I learned as a result of the experience of having him as my father overwhelmed the degree of hurt that I felt." Norman Lear somehow did what Archie Bunker and Cain of the Book of Genesis were unable to do: to choose a response other than reenacting what he had been taught, to recognize that he was a separate person from his parent, to take the hardship he experienced not as a reason to pass blame on to others, but as an opportunity to open his heart to compassion and his mind in curiosity. And he was a curious person. Lear told Rolling Stone that his passion for good storytelling was built from a love of all walks of life. In fact, if there's one thing he'd like to see more of on TV today, he said, it's diversity. Lear emphasized that in these difficult times in America, media needs to pay all the more attention to social issues and a diversity of voices. Well, let's come back to the church level and to the very practical question of what can individual members do to support the health of an emotional system such as a congregation. Stenke says that in any such emotional system, be it a family, a church, a group of people who work together, the more undifferentiated or emotionally stuck together people are, the more triangles appear. In other words, the less skilled individuals in the group have for handling their own anxiety, the more side conversations will occur outside decision-making channels. This is where people talk about things that concern them, but in ways that can't constructively affect those things and may just stir other people up too. The whole system benefits when individuals can learn ways to regulate their own anxiety. This is one reason that having a spiritual practice benefits not only the person who does it, but everyone around them. No matter how healthy a group is, though, there will always be people in it who get anxious and do not know how to effectively handle their own anxiety, which is likely to lead to unhealthy triangles. This begs the question, what should you do if you find someone else trying to pull you into a triangle? Sharing their anxiety with you in hopes that you will take an issue on for them? Well, first, it's appropriate to express empathy for someone who is in pain, who has been triggered, who has anxiety for whatever reason. And so a calm response will help them the most, as opposed to letting the infection of anxiety spread to you if you can. Second, don't try to rescue the person. Instead, you might ask them what helps them to be calm and grounded and encourage them to do those things. And third, encourage them to speak directly with the people who actually do have something to do with the concern. Assume that that person, even though they are anxious at the moment, has the capacity to express their own concerns, and that leaders will hear their concerns with due care. This way, you are offering a caring response, but you don't have to take on that person's anxiety yourself, and their concerns may be shared and responded to in a constructive way. As I've been learning about Westside's history and culture these past 4 months, one thing that stands out to me is that this is a congregation that can deal in constructive ways with conflict and anxiety. There's not been an absence of either of those things here, conflict or anxiety. No human group is free of them. But you have tackled some challenging situations over the years and learned how to move forward together in love, tending not only to the people in your midst, but to the vision of what Westside is here to do in Fort Worth. A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of listening to a group of past presidents of Westside reflect with one another on some of the challenges and joys of congregational leadership. There have been many times in the life of the congregation when anxiety could have derailed you from your mission, but it didn't. I heard a long litany of examples of when you established a sound congregational process for making tough decisions. It wasn't necessarily easy, but you managed the anxiety that was inevitably present and came through it stronger and more ready to carry out your mission. Westside didn't falter when a fire ravaged the site the congregation then occupied on McCart Avenue, nor when the congregation voted not to renew the contract of one of its early ministers and went for a year without professional leadership. You didn't stumble when you made the significant decision to go from a part-time minister to a full-time call minister, nor when that minister, Russell Elvin, went on sabbatical. You weren't pulled apart by anxiety when you considered a change of name for the church, nor when Reverend Elvin resigned and the congregation again found itself without a minister for a period, and then 2 long years of interim ministry. Most recently, the congregation voted not to renew the lease with Angel Montessori School, foregoing the income from that lease in favor of having the full use of this facility to meet our mission. Members voice their opinions and vote, and although not everyone voted the same, you're supporting the outcome. Few of these decisions have been easy. There probably are others that I left out. But because the process allows everyone to be heard and to participate in the decision-making, the outcomes have been accepted. I'm told I had the privilege of being present for perhaps the only unanimous decision this congregation has made in its 20-year history, which is calling me as your new settled ministry, which I think says less about me than it does about the leadership and how far Westside has come in establishing healthy processes and an effective emotional system in the congregation. And by the way, let's not expect other decisions in the future to be unanimous. It's pretty normal for there to be a diversity of opinion on any significant issue. So there's always more to learn, and I think there's more for us to learn here at Westside. But I believe this congregation knows that a healthy church system is one in which people not only come with their human flaws, but also bring their desire to grow and their readiness to make commitments to that end. Most people accept that the best way to handle problems or concerns is to take those concerns directly to those who can do something about it, as opposed to triangulating. We affirm that those who speak their minds and keep their sense of humor, those who are self-differentiated, preserve the health of this community. And you understand that those who do not avoid conflict, but face it and work through it, with the vision of beloved community and a brighter future ever in mind, you help turn that vision into reality, right here, right now. Like the family of dogs in our children's story, this congregation knows that regardless of our differences of background and personal experiences, this church family is at its best when it plays together and gives thanks together, baying in gratitude to the moon or whoever might listen. The dog family did this no matter what the weather, no matter how many or how few of the family was home, no matter how they felt. Dog family gathered together each and every night to greet the moon and share their thanks. So do we gather each week here at Westside, for we are all in the family of this church. And we know that it's worth managing our anxieties and keeping the community strong so that it can fulfill its role in the larger community, as a place where compassion leads us to work for justice and equality, as a force of love and healing in a world still full of Archie bumpers. For that is why we are here. Let us continue this work together with gratitude for all that we have received and for all that we can give. May it be so. Amen. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in our closing hymn. We sing now together, number 67.